Hey everyone, this is Karen with Naturally with Karen. I thought I'd get a live stream in tonight, but it's getting dark quickly. And I wanted to make this a really short one, so I'm sorry that you can barely see me. I'll try to lean over this way where there's a little more light. It's really chilly today. It's about 13 degrees, and I got caught up with some errands, or busy with some errands, I should say. Helping someone out and getting some Suboxone and some opiate issues, some, loving care for opiate issues. So let's get started. This particular live stream is about SSRIs, Lobotomized, and the Headband. And the reason I called it that is because for at least 15 years of the decades of coaching that I've been doing, I have found more and more of my clients using antidepressants and a specific class of antidepressants called SSRIs. What an SSRI is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Anytime you speak about an inhibitor, as I was just explaining to my son, it has to do with something that is stopping an action or reducing an action. So this particular class of drugs that's used as an antidepressant, and it's also used for other issues, has everything to do with stopping an action in your brain chemistry. So traditional or allopathic medicine, psychology, psychiatry especially, because that is your prescribing doctor with a psychiatric additional education, will prescribe these when people complain about depression or they've been diagnosed with bipolar and for sundry different issues. In my world as a coach, what I can help you with, what I've helped hundreds of people with actually, is alleviating anxiety and depression through the tools that they have available to themselves, and they really work. When I make it well known about wheat and what wheat does, and if you have any further interest in this, you can read Kelly Brogan, Dr. Kelly Brogan's book called A Mind of Your Own. And she talks about how she took people off of wheat in many of her videos that you can watch as well. Many doctors and psychiatrists, a relative few compared to the whole, speak about how they're able to alleviate the medication or the drugs by changing people's diet. Now, you find that they'll talk about this doctor, look at the rabbit running by, or there's a beautiful big bunny running right up to Lake Superior, and I'm going to try to lean over so you can see me a little more. When people use these medications, most people eventually, if they're the people that are really in touch with themselves, that really get a good sense they're present and authentic inside of themselves, to the degree possible as you possibly could be with taking an antidepressant that's an SSRI, that affects the neurotransmitter, neurological, brain and heart, transmitter, how you transmit and also receive your signals, your waves, your information, your data, okay? So as we move more and more towards machine language and you have disorders, an out-of-order machine, we're looking towards, traditional medicine looks towards speaking about the brain and the body in a very mechanized way. You've got personality disorder. You've got schizophrenic affective disorder. And even so far as, like I spoke about opiates or opioids, you've got opiate abuse disorder. So where we used to have syndromes and symptoms, we now have disorders, which is mechanistic or machine language. Now, with so many of my clients over the last 15 years where I've really been working with people with SSRI damage, the frontal lobes here, as was discussed with me over 15 years ago by Dr. Gary Kohl, who's now retired in Duluth, Minnesota, and can be found at the Peace Church. He talked about how it would really start to affect the frontal lobes with the use of SSRIs within about 6 months of use. What do we do if we have people that are going into psychiatric or facilities because of mental breakdown, or they're extremely suicidal they're prone to suicidal ideation? Is these types of drugs and sedative drugs are being administered, SSRIs and sedatives and perhaps anti-inflammatories, depending on the culmination of what's begun to happen for this person, right? If there's a lot of gut inflammation and they've got diarrhea and distended gut and, on and on and on, because a depressed person is typically going to start eating an extremely poor but high glycemic diet. They're going to eat a lot of wheat. And if you eat an organic whole grain sandwich, expensive bread, right? The brown bread that's, organic whole grain, turkey sandwich or whatever you eat, it actually has a higher glycemic hit to the body than a king-size Snickers bar. So I know many times if you listen with my live streams, you're going to hear me say, avoid the wheat, and this is why. Okay. So Dr. Gary Kohl of Duluth, Minnesota, who's now retired, who I met with about 15 years ago, and I went to his retirement at the Peace Church, and I was brand new to Minnesota pretty much by about a year. I went and I spoke at his retirement when he retired. It was a couple of years after I'd learned from him, and very thankful for it. And he created something called the Mind Freedom Project. And he writes for the Reader paper that circulated in Duluth, and perhaps his column goes to many other cities, I don't know. So Dr. Gary Kohl, Kohls, introduced me to one very important amino acid that worked so well as a therapeutic foster parent for myself and for my clients over the years for anxiety. We talked extensively about depression because just about everyone has at least a little bit of depression at some point in their life, but I see it as a maladaptation or a malaise, a disappointment, really, to what's going on in our world today. We don't want walls and borders and wars and Agent Orange and more vaccines every day and chemicalized foods, and you bring your food home, and if you bring home tomatoes and avocados, you got to take the stickers off of all of them, right? So with SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are changing the way that your brain works to be a type of an inhibitory action. Bless up, Kim. Good to see you. I'm sitting over here by the lake trying to squeeze into the window while I have, here we go, a little bit of light, but it's extremely crisp out. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. So now you can see me a little bit more. I've got my my thing on here because it's so cold. All right. So SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they inhibit, give thanks. I know I didn't for a couple of days because I was showing you guys the lake and I was kind of avoiding the camera, and I'm always an open book that way, so I'll always be direct with you and honest, candid and forthright and direct. So serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, these are all neurological, brain and heart, the neurological system, the nerves, the neurons are the nerve cells. Nothing super difficult to learn here. The average person could easily know these things. If I can know them, you can know them. They are transmitters. They're transmitting signals because you're electrical, and you're transmitting these signals through your glands, which my Facebook thing is not useful. There we go. When you take an SSRI antidepressant, you are going to find that after about 6 months, or maybe even more so if you're very sensitive, you're going to find that you start to feel as if you have a band across your forehead. That's why I said lobotomized and headband. because I have a client right now that actually shared with me, chili, that he feels lobotomized. So if you don't know what a lobotomy is, I know I had Sis Kim watch the movie Frances Farmer, where they stuck the knitting needle in her eye and tried to destroy, see where my finger's pointing here? Tried to destroy, and at that time it was called a transorbital. Trans means what? Into the eye. Orbital, well, the eye is the orbit, excuse me. Transorbit, so it goes into the eye and up to the connections here in the frontal lobes and severs them. So instead of us doing a transorbital lobotomy, which were done all the time, and women often were hysterical and placed into insane asylums or placed into attics or done away with because you could get a younger version, we now give people the headband. Now, what's important for you to note is with the installation of 5G, and I'm going to drop a really huge nugget here that I know none of you have ever heard before. With the installation of 5G, the headband that you have actually enables you to be much more controlled. You heard me. You heard me right. That headband makes it so you will be, boy, that rabbit is running around, probably just freezing out here, will make it so that you're able to be much more manipulated and controlled. Yes. Okay. I am going to drop openly direct nuggets as well as encoded nuggets for you. And whether I feel the most optimum about putting my face on here or not, I'm going to get on here and I'm going to do this because it's extremely important to have these memorialized so that you have them, just like pure luminosity. And we want you to have these shares so that you can really equip yourself in a much better way and you can be aware. So I would say about, 10 or 12 years ago, I had clients coming in that were taking Paxil, clients on Wellbutrin, clients on Effexor, clients on Celexa. I had clients on all kinds of medications, and just last year in 2018, yeah, exactly. I don't care what I look like today because I've got my my hat on and my big, the scarf thing that I put over, and it is what it is, right? I'm going to go home in a few moments. I'm in front of Lake Superior again after all the running around, getting over here at about a little after noon. And so we were stuck in a medical office for many hours for someone. So people that take, give thanks. I appreciate that. People that take SSRIs, and I want you to look them up. If you don't know what they are, they're selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And just like on Darlena Brandon's post last night when she was talking about immunotherapy, that particular article that I perused very quickly talked about using chemotherapy, radiation, and inhibitory, so genetically blocking vaccines, okay? So if you're going to use genetic blockers in the form of vaccines and you're going to target specific genes and you're going to still use chemotherapy and radiation, to me, that makes the word immunotherapy sound very, very misleading. In fact, I find it trickster because the average person, just like I don't know how to fix my car and my house, I've said this over and over, sees immunotherapy and it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. I mean, you've got your immune system and you got your therapy, so it sounds like it's probably going to be really great. So this is where, when we're connected, as Sis Kim talked about today, when we're connected and an elder is pouring out some of the information and, the youngers start to get the information even younger, and our babies start to get the information, and they start to be able to know these things. I would ideally like to have our children know a full-on gamut of real medicine by the age of 12. By the age of 12, between the ages of 9 and 12 for 3 years, they would learn just about everything you needed to know about the body, which would never include learning the Latin names and wasting their RAM, their precious memory, for absolutely ridiculous Harry Potter language that is built into a never-ending, power-wielding ISD, which is ICD, International Code of Disease. So every one of your diagnoses is built on an ICD code, and there are 10 volumes now, or maybe there's more. Last time I kept track of it. It's an International Code of Disease, just like anything psychological or psychiatric is in a DSM, which is Diagnostic Service Manual. I know you know that. So when last year I took a client off Wellbutrin and Effexor, 2 of them, he prescribed 2. And I took another client off of Wellbutrin and warfarin. And when I say I took them off, I helped them to transition to stabilize themselves while we approved it with both the Mayo and the VA hospital, or concierge doctors who oversaw everything. And the reason is because of the legalized medicine that we have today. We have legal indemnity and liability if someone like me that is experienced just says, let's take you off those medications, I run the risk of having a legal problem. So no, what I do with my clients is I ask them to coordinate full-on permission and awareness with their doctors. And I've been fortunate to have a very small handful of clients whose doctors are more than willing to help them or their clients. There goes another rabbit. My gosh, the rabbits. Oh, now I've got 2 rabbits out here. That's quite the omen, guys. We've got a rabbit to the left and a rabbit to the right in front of Lake Superior. It's really weird. I've never seen this before. Okay, so rabbits are an omen of fertility, or meaning like a new birthing of ideas. And this is really super powerful. So this is a really great omen, or animal sighting, right? Whatever you want to call it. Spirit sighting, nature sighting. Okay. Many of my clients told me that when they had transitioned off of these medications, because they started to feel so good, and they transitioned off SSRIs. Please don't for just a minute, okay? You need to wait. When they transitioned off, they were able to feel so much better than they'd ever felt before. And that's because they were eating differently. They had eliminated more efficiently. Their urine wasn't smelling and pungent and bubbly. If you get up in the morning and your urine is bubbly and pungent and stinky, chances are, can you see Luna? She just wants to go outside, and I'm not going to let her get out to get the bunnies, but when everybody leaves and the bunnies are gone, I'm probably going to walk them down there towards the start of the lighthouse. So these antidepressants, while we are using them in critical situations, we are now using them way too much. And the problem is that we are banding people. The headband. Uh-oh. Hang on, guys. There's a dog coming. Oh, hang on, guys. Just a moment. Come on, guys. Go sit down. Go sit down. Okay, guys. The lady walking by with her dog on a leash, just when you think you're somewhere absolutely quiet. So, hey, come on, guys. Hey, fire. Come on. They want to go outside so much. So SSRIs are your antidepressants. They will eventually, whether it's a year, 2 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it is, they're going to leave you feeling lobotomized, vacuous, damaged. I'm starting to get contacts more and more from people who say, I don't know if I'll ever be able to heal myself. My nervous system isn't working like it should. I feel just vacuous and spacey and I don't feel right. And yes, you can be helped. I can't guarantee you, I can't promise you, but I will promise you that you're going to feel remarkably better. You may not feel all the way better, but chances are you may. Okay? So I want you to be aware of two things: the lobotomized feeling that's happening, what SSRIs are, why you want to avoid them if you can, right? I'm not telling you because of the hysteria around people that are not credentialed overcompetence. I'm not asking you to get off of SSRIs, and I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I am saying is if you're taking them right now, look them up on your smartphone or go home and look it up on Google and say, what is an SSRI? What does it do? What are the contraindications? What are the side effects of the SSRIs that I'm taking? And why is it that I'm that depressed in the first place? Take a look at your table and take a look at your refrigerator. Do you see dairy and mucus and phlegm and wheat and cheese and all kinds of nitrates and tons of sugar? Are you drinking wine every night because you need to unwind and relax? Coffee in the morning and wine at night, or coffee in the morning and cannabis every single night before you go to sleep. And I know a lot of people that would benefit if they were not manipulating their poles. So the doctors have come up with bipolar because they have sold you products to enable you to become bipolar, elevate you in the morning with your caffeine, as I'm pointing up rather, and depress you in the evening so you can wind down and go to sleep after you've jacked yourself up to make it through your day. So now when the brain is tired and the chemicals aren't functioning right, and you've never been feeding your thyroid, you've never been feeding your nervous system, you haven't been getting sunlight on the body, you've been blocking sunlight on the body by applying sunscreen, all those years, maybe mama put it on you as a baby, as a toddler, to protect you, gave you all the vaccines. Oh boy. That was all right, I'm really sorry, guys. I really honestly anticipated a super quiet session here. I'm very sorry. I would not have thought that a woman would be out walking her dog along the lake right now in the dark in this freezing cold, but good for her. I'm glad she is. That's super positive. Look up SSRIs, look up Francis Farmer and what happened with lobotomies. Look up the Headband, and even go into some of your Reddit subreddits, your groups, the groups that are very anti-drug, and look up how people that have been on SSRIs start to feel vacuous and empty and foggy and cloudy and lobotomized, and they feel like they've got a headband. And then look up and find out really what HARP and the cell phone 5G and everything with all these towers coming around you and you being on the grid in your zipped code and what that's doing to you, because it's not great.